Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It's another new release. It is Johnny Marr's latest album, Fever Dreams Part 1 to 4. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So this is Johnny Marr's latest album. It was released on the 25th of February 2022, and his last album, since his last album, which was called Call the Comet, that came out in 2018, and he's mostly really just been touring since then, and working on various other projects, including film soundtracks, most notably the latest James Bond film, No Time to Die. So the album was originally announced back in the middle of last year, and initially I thought that it was coming out, and I think probably most people did, thought it was coming out as 4 individual EPs, that was just the format it was being released. So I did buy the first one, however, it kind of, well, I don't say I regret buying it or anything, but then it was announced maybe a month or two later that they were all coming out on one album, so it didn't really make any sense to buy the other. I believe he's only released the other 2 EPs, and then the rest has kind of just been on the album. So it is a big album. This it is 16 tracks in total, so certainly the longest album Marr has ever released, really certainly a very ambitious collection of songs here. However, in terms of its kind of production and sort of the personnel on this album, it's very much the same as his as all his other solo albums. He's got the same group of musicians here working with him, and they're all I think they're all self-produced albums, or he's certainly working with his sort of guitarist, keyboard player. He has quite a lot of impact. I think he's called Doviak, I think that's his name. He's still heavily involved with this album, and that band celebrates I believe their 10-year anniversary of being together, Johnny Marr's sort of backing band. So they've been playing together for a long time, and they know what they're doing, sort of thing by now, and it does really show on this album. So critical reception has been mostly positive. I certainly haven't seen any really bad reviews of it, on my kind of research. But some have been a bit more mixed though. I think I've seen quite a few suggesting that it is a little bit too long of an album, and that there's maybe not enough sort of variety in terms of its sound. But most of the reviews though are generally really positive, and commercially it has done very well. It reached number 4 here in the UK, which is his highest placing as a solo artist. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also his highest chart placing since Electronic's first album. I know he's been involved with some other bands, but that album came out way back in I think 1990 or 1991. Certainly his highest charted album since then. So quite a big achievement here. So anyway, I will try to show you my vinyl copy of it. Now I got the bundle online, so I also got the CD for it here, which is just a kind of basic sort of card sort of CD there, comes out there, and then there's a little booklet with the lyrics to all the songs in there as well, and then my copy also came with a signed insert, which I've put at the front here. So my actual vinyl's not signed, but it came with this, which I've just sort of popped in the front of the album. This is very much just a big version of that CD there. So in a gatefold wise, it looks like this, which is really nice. Again, I'm pretty sure that sky is been sort of photoshopped on there. It's definitely not that sunny in Manchester most days, where this picture's taken, which is in his studio. Because again, last year he did a kind of a web live stream thing from there, which I definitely try and seek out if you can. I'm not sure if it's still available online or what, but no, that was really good. He did songs from this album and a few other Smith songs and whatnot. So that was one of the records there. And as I said, it's a double album this, if I just try and get that back in there. And the other one looks like this, so fairly plain sort of design to it there, just the lyrics. And again, mine is just a black vinyl pressing off it there. So anyway, I will now go over each of the album's songs, so I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us an overall percentage marking for the album. Time is cold. So it kicks off with a song, Spirit, Power and Soul, which is a really fun, upbeat opener, this one here. Sounds very New Order-like, certainly, like, it's the kind of material you kind of wish that New Order, were kind of pumping out, like, these days and that. It's just great, and, like, kind of lyrics about kind of looking forward to, like, the future, kind of like the first line, like, on it is, yesterday is gone, today I'm so on the run. So that's a great kind of first line to kick off, like, the album, like, as, like, a whole, really. And, yeah, like I said, the song itself is just really well produced. It is a bit more dancey than probably like what Marr is kind of known for, like as a solo artist, but it's certainly a style which suits him well, and he does pull off like with ease. So yeah, Spirit, Power and Soul for me would get a 10 out of 10. It was a cracking like sort of like first single for the album. Came out I think like July last year there. And then we get a song, Receiver, which this one kind of begins really kind of loud and sort of like, it's kind of got a sense of kind of like foreboding to it. You've got this sort of loud, distorted guitar riff to open the track, but then it kind of then just sort of settles in to this kind of sort of like mid-tempo groove sort of thing. Lyrically, it's maybe slightly weaker, this song, and it's sort of like, he's kind of singing like on like the chorus, do you receive me, come over, decode. I mean, it's kind of the kind of same sort of kind of lyrical cliches he's used a little bit on albums like The Messenger and Playland, but I do think this is musically quite fresh though. Especially like on like the bridge section where it goes in a slightly different direction, and like it's a fairly, I think it reached about 5 minutes this song, but like it doesn't feel that long because there's enough happening. There's enough happening like in like the track to keep like you interested. But yeah, just like for me lyrically a little bit like on like the weaker side there. So Receiver would get an 8 out of 10 from me. Next up is called All These Days, and this is another track which just sounds like classic kind of like Johnny Marr like sort of thing, like really like up until the chorus like of this song, you know, you could be forgiven for thinking it was I guess any number like of other like kind of Johnny Marr songs. It has got kind of all this kind of solo trademarks on it, like the kind of lowly sort of sung vocal, you know, where it is a bit, I don't say monotone, but it is quite lowly sung, like on like the song, and then these kind of choppy like guitar chords and sort of like a kind of like subtle riff going on behind it. But then for me though, by the time we get to like the chorus, that's really where the song sort of finds its feet. He sings with it like, in these days life is all perfect storms, in these days holding on for too long, and his vocal just really soars like on that part, and you can really tell like how far he has come like as like as a singer, because I mean it is worth noting like he didn't really start singing like on like his like at all like until like the album like The Messenger came out in 2012, and really like since then like he has grown in confidence like as like a vocalist, and like to like the point like where like he's doing songs like this which really do showcase like quite a strong vocal ability. So yeah, All These Days though for me would get an 8 out of 10. It is a good song this, but again it's maybe not quite as sort of memorable like as like other kind of Johnny Marr sort of like solo songs and like other songs that we'll get to like on the album. Next up is called Aerial. And this one again is another really nice song. It begins with slightly more like acoustic sort of bass sounds like on this one. It reminds me again quite a bit of like other sort of solo songs of his, things like Hi Hello, where it's just kind of a bit more jangly like this one here. But the song does grow though like beyond that, and you can kind of I guess in some places hear this kind of soundtrack work like coming into like the fray on this, with you kind of got like these strings going on. Again, I've assumed they're all keyboards and that, but like again they just like enhance the song like a little bit. So yeah, for me, like overall, this is a decent song. Again, it didn't blow me away like on first listen. Certainly, like I remember, like when like the first EP came out, I was overall a bit disappointed like in it. Like as I said, like this was like these first like 4 songs like were part of like the Fever Dreams Part 1 EP. So certainly, like beyond Spirit, Power and Soul, there was nothing really there what really blew me away. You know, they're all solid good songs, but yeah, like nothing really like too much there. Too much different there, like from like maybe some of like his other sort of solo work. But then we're on to side 2 or part 2 like of the album, and it kicks off with a song called Lightning People. And this for me is one of the weaker moments like on the album for me. It kind of begins with a sort of like a kind of like a mellotron sort of thing going on, like on or certainly some kind of synth bed. It's the type of thing I guess you could imagine like Oasis doing on, say, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants album, like a Heathen Chemistry, that sort of feel to it. But for me, it is a little dull, and it kind of loses its momentum like halfway through, because it is kind of stopping and starting like a lot of the time, but like there's not enough sort of structure like to this song like for me. I mean, it does have some quite nice creative backing vocals on it, but yeah, like overall doesn't really do too much, and we'll get a 6 out of 10 there for Lightning People. Next track up is Hideaway Girl, and this is a really good track, and this is for me musically Marr like at his absolute best. You've got a catchy guitar riff on it and a kind of like sing-alongable sort of chorus on it. But again, however, lyrically, it is maybe a little bit like on like the weaker side. I guess like with Marr's lyrics, he always is a bit abstract, you know. Certainly, he's kind of a lot of kind of word association and like a little bit abstract. It's sometimes hard to get at like what he's saying. Like, but on a kind of song like this, certainly like on like the verses, it's kind of like he's not really saying much at all. He says like, "What's the game? What's insane? Every day is a fever dream. Oh, you know you've got to give it all, the love you get." Like that's like the chorus bit, like that last line, and like that's really catchy. Like, but kind of like up to that point is maybe like a bit like lackluster. But again, I do enjoy the track though. Like the musical performance of it is great, and the band just do an absolutely killer performance. So really, like for like that alone, like it get like a 9 out of 10. But it is though like again a solid, really good song this. So that's Hideaway Girl. Somewhere on Century Street, Next up is Sensory Street, and this was another one of the kind of singles from the album, or kind of like the kind of lead tracks from like these EPs which he'd sort of like been doing. And this is just a kind of big sounding song. This, you know, you've got this kind of cracking kind of synthesizer based opener on it, and again sort of lyrically you can probably tell he is kind of talking about like the pandemic on it. He sings in it like, "Walk and talk in the danger zone, we got to go beyond the world." And there's just a lot of swagger like in this song here. Again, it's a really nice interesting guitar textures. There's kind of bits where you kind of can't really tell like if it's a guitar like on a keyboard, which is really kind of good place to be. You know, it's sort of being creative and like doing and like sort of trying out different sounds, which I do like on this song a lot. So for me, Sensory Street would get a 10 out of 10. It is a song like I could definitely see myself coming back to. Next up is called Tenement Time, and this is another kind of loud, sort of like in-your-face sort of song, but really catchy though, really kind of sing-alongable chorus on it. Quite sort of glam rock style, this one here, like you could almost imagine like in like another live, say T-Rex sort of like doing this one, like Mark Bolan, like Top of the Pops and that back in the day. It's got that kind of sort of like that kind of glammy sort of feel to it, but like sort of like still quite pop and like accessible like at the same time. I mean, lyrically I do have like no idea like what he's talking about, like when he sort of means by tenement time, but it is an infectious chorus though, and I could really see this song coming alive like in like a live sort of setting. Like I'm not sure like if this is what he's like ever done live yet, like but certainly like I could see this one becoming like a live favourite of his. So yeah, another 10 out of 10 there for me with Tenement Time. I don't know why I see you right. Okay, and then we're on to part 3, so the halfway point on the album now, and we got a song called The Speed of Love, and this is a much more slower kind of song, this one here. Well, like when I say slow, it's a bit more downbeat, but like you've still got a lot of drums in it, you've still got like kind of still like a lot going on like on this song here, but it's a bit more atmospheric, this one, I would say. And certainly, like, I do really like the lyrics on this one here. He says in it, like, "I don't know why I see you right, makes me blind, but I see everything in you." So it is a kind of bit of like a love song, this. So, but it's just really beautifully like atmospheric. This one reminds me a bit of like How Soon Is Now, but like a little bit less like intense. intense than that, but like it's got that kind of loose kind of rolling nature to it where like you kind of can't really tell like if like you're in a chorus like or like a verse like off like the song. But yeah, though, like a really good song there for me. Like we get a 10 out of 10. Like I can't really find fault with it. Next one up is called Night and Day, and this again was another one of the singles from the album, certainly like I think like the last kind of like preview single like he had for it. And this is a really great song though for me. It is a good combination of the kind of poppy sort of dance sort of element, again a bit of a throwback to the days like of like electronic, and his kind of indie guitar rock sort of thing like what like he's known for. And lyrically, I guess it's maybe perhaps a bit about sort of like news like on like current events and kind of sort of how kind of things sort of spread on like social media like and like whatnot. He sings like fuse burns up, the world stirs up, the news shakes up, the mood blows up, and it's all round a kind of fun, catchy song. This well produced. And yeah, just a really good song though. Again, really catchy, really sing-alongable. So yeah, for me, Night and Day, again, a really great song, a 10 out of 10 there. It's been so long. And then we get the track called Counterclock World, and this for me is a song really of two halves. Certainly, sort of like when it starts, it is kind of really upbeat. You've got this kind of drum pattern going on. Reminds me quite a lot of Joy Division's She's Lost Control. It's actually kind of like identical to that. And then you get this heavy propulsive sort of Peter Hook style bass line on it, plus some kind of fun like acoustic guitar frills, and it's just thrilling, you know, sort of like that kind of like that first minute where it's just instrumental, where it kind of is building up and building up. It sounds great, and then you get like this chorus line like where he sings like, it's been so long coming to be someone again. That just really soars and really just flies. But for me though, the verse on this is quite weak. Certainly lyrically, it is kind of him just sort of listing sort of random words. He says like rushing, burning, crashing, coming, you know, just not really saying anything like of like any substance. And that's kind of why I would mark it down. Like just because again he's not really posing any sort of like new like lyrical like ideas like on it. It's just a bit generic and like a little bit I guess I don't say lazy, but like I think he could have done so much more like with this, or maybe like even just left half of it like as like an instrumental, like I might have even preferred. But yeah though, Counterclock World though, like musically great, but lyrically certainly like the verses a little bit like on like the weaker side, so we'll get an 8 out of 10 there. Slip away. And then part 3 of the album closes out with a song called Rubicon, which is quite a different sort of song this. It's a kind of spoken word track this. I mean, it is only quite short. It's about, I don't even know like if it reaches 3 minutes this. Again, possibly inspired by his kind of soundtrack work, like which he's done. Again, it's very different for Marr, you know, like he's never really done a track like this, so certainly this album does cover a lot of scope, a lot of musical ground to it. But it is a bit of filler there for me, and certainly if like I was given the task of kind of cutting this down to like a sort of single album, this is certainly one of the first songs like I would throw off it like there. But though, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's nothing really too much to it. So Rubicon would get a 5 out of 10. Okay, and then we get the final side, part 4. Now, all these songs were kind of brand new, like when the album came out, and I must say this could be my favourite part, like of the album. I'm not sure, like if it is just because he's on new songs, but typically, like even then saying that, typically, like with like Johnny Marr's, you kind of have to give the songs a few listens, you know, like to really sort of bed in. But for some reason, like with like all these songs on part 4, they'd just be really like immediate to me. So yeah, it kicks off a song called God's Gift. And this one is a really good song. It's got a kind of 90s sort of throwback to it, like I would say, kind of 90s Manchester sort of vibe to it. Like I can almost imagine, say, the Stone Roses like doing this song like back in the day. And if you're comparing it to, say, other Johnny Marr songs, certainly it's kind of feel like the kind of sort of like the very kind of, I guess kind of melodic but sort of flowing sort of chorus line very much reminds me of the Crack Up from the Messenger album. Again, lyrically, it's maybe slightly against sort of like religion and that. He asks like on the song, God's gift, who needs this? Glory Be, Oh I Get It. And it's just a really catchy song though, and another highlight like on the album there, so that would get a 9 out of 10.
The wheel is turning and I say love.
And their track up is called Ghoster, and this could be, I don't want to say my favourite like on the album, but certainly up there for me as a real like hidden gem. It's certainly not been pulled like as a single, and I don't really think is ever going to get too much attention, but I really like it. It begins with this kind of heavy kind of drum like introduction. It really is just drums like to start with, but then we get a kind of fuzzy bass riff going on, which again usually with Marr he kicks things off with a guitar, so it's nice to hear a sort of bass like form like the kind of foundation like off like the track. And really then it just sort of gets into this kind of like hypnotic groove sort of thing, and like that chorus line he says like the wheel is turning and I say love, the way we're burning now and I say love. That bit, like just the way the song kind of flows and sort of like the kind of interplay between the bass and the drums and his vocal just works really well. Once again, a perfectly produced song, and I would say unlike anything he's ever really done before. So for me, yeah, Ghoster would get a 10 out of 10. Next up is called The Whirl, and this is a more kind of straight ahead rocker, this one here. Quite sort of punky influence, like I would say. You have got these kind of sort of jaggy edges on it. It's certainly not as kind of smooth and as polished as some of like his like other songs like on this album. There is a lot of kind of rough edges like on this song here. Lyrically again, it's perhaps about being kind of paranoid, like about like the future. He sings in it, the future's counting down, gotta get out of it. I really like your style, but I'm missing the hit. The devil is in the dose. And yeah, I mean, like, wow, like as I said, the song is like when it's on, it is a good song. It is really like enjoyable, gets like your toe tapping and that. It just maybe again isn't quite immediate as some other songs, and it is and yeah, maybe not quite as memorable like as other songs. Again, trying to like sort of like recall like how this one goes, like is like a little bit tricky. But saying that, I mean, like I've only really had the album for I think like just like over 2 weeks now, so so yeah, like it's maybe yeah, like just not had a chance to sort of bed in yet. But so yeah, but like overall though, for me, The Whirl would get an 8 out of 10. And then the album closes with the track Human, and this is a really good closer. It's quite hopeful, a little bit melancholic. He sort of like sings like on it, it's just human when you try, just too human when you cry, win or lose you realise, cause better's gonna come, yeah. So it's got that kind of feel of kind of, yeah, hope, sort of looking to the future like and that, but also like understanding kind of one's sort of weaknesses like and like vulnerabilities. But I do think this song might have been a bit more effective had he kept the kind of arrangement very stripped back. Certainly like when it starts, it is just Marr like an acoustic guitar, which is certainly something he's never really done before. Certainly not since I think like the last song like off that kind of style. Possibly it's that song which he done with the Healers. Forget what it's called. It was certainly like their like most popular song. God, like the title like escapes me, but that's quite acoustic, that one. And like this one, like when it starts, again, you think it is quite it is going to be a kind of more acoustic song, but then kind of like when you get to the chorus, you like all the other like instruments come in, and then it does maybe sound a little bit generic Johnny Marr sort of thing. But though I do like overall though still really rate the song. I think songwriting wise it is one of the stronger moments like on the album there. So overall, Human would get a 9 out of 10 from me. Okay, so overall this album would score 86%, so that is a really great score for a really great album here. I think it is a bit of a departure for kind of Johnny Marr like overall. Certainly like kind of certainly like that kind of middle part like of the album, you've got a lot more synthesizers kind of dominating like the tracks, like as opposed to guitars, and that's, I guess, he's not immune to using he's not like immune to like using synthesizers. He certainly pioneered that like on like the last couple of Smith's albums with kind of string samples and like whatnot. And then of course like his work like with like Bernard Sumner in electronic. Like, but certainly like as a kind of solo album, this is very ambitious and it mostly works. I mean, there's a couple like of misses on here, Lightning People and Rubicon being the two what really stand out. But then aside from that, there's nothing else really what I would kind of see sort of throwing off the album. Yeah, there's maybe a couple of tracks which maybe I didn't quite immediately love or like immediately get, like, but certainly there's very little on here like I would sort of skip or like overlook, which is like quite a good sort of showing there like for like a double album. I mean, maybe it is a bit too long. Like that was like the one complaint I did see like in quite a lot of like reviews, that it maybe would have been better like as for like individual EPs. Like, I mean, like I'm not so sure. Like I don't know. I think it though does remain sort of strong throughout. You know, there's not an obvious sort of drop in quality. You know, like with a lot of albums, they start great and then by the end you kind of like wanting it off. You know, like with this one, like there's kind of up and down like as like you go sort of like through the album. And I guess it's maybe that thing. It maybe doesn't feel like much of a journey sort of thing like you're going on. You know, like some sort of double albums, like, you know, like you kind of feel like you're kind of going somewhere with it. Whereas this one, especially like in places like the good individual songs, but it doesn't feel like it's sort of like they're sort of pulling together to create like something like off like a kind of like greater level sort of thing, like sort of like something like off like a greater like value like as like a whole album. And compared to some of his other recent albums, like or like his other 3 solo albums, I would certainly prefer this to like the first 2, which are again a bit hit and miss. But I would say it isn't as strong as Call the Comet from 2018. That album is fantastic, you know. But again, a single album though. There's only I think 11 or 12 songs on that, so that's a lot more concise, like sort of thing. But this one though is still really good though. And like yeah, it's definitely like worth checking out there. So I hope you have enjoyed my review of Johnny Marr's Fever Dreams. And yes, if you've got any requests for future reviews, please do leave them down below. And I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.
Guess you're real in the hot spot.